We just want to thank very much the EPA for partnering with us and helping get the information out about this webinar. We're grateful. We've been in pretty constant communications, trying to get as much information out as possible to our frontline workers. We greatly appreciate all of you. We know everyone's dealing with a new normal, and not just technology-wise. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany again. Thank you, everybody. And remember, we are all here to help support you.
Great. Thank you, Dawn, and thank you to the AWEA team for being the boots on the ground to get our information out to those who need it. Brian's going to talk a little bit about how we disseminate information, and a lot of our internal contacts at Ohio EPA are strictly through who delivers EDMRs into the system and or operators of record, and those aren't always accurate with the latest and greatest, and it's not reaching necessarily the larger population like the attorneys and the utility directors and the municipality staff that are also highly involved in what you guys do. So AWEA is our perfect channel for us to disseminate information. But first of all, I just want to welcome everybody. I know we were told we had upwards of 300 registrants, which is fantastic. A couple of minutes ago, about 180 had been logged into this. So welcome everybody. Thank you. Sorry it has taken so long for us to do something like this, but the drinking and groundwater, the water plants were the highest priority for the agency to get the water plants up and going and making sure that they had everything they need. And so on behalf of Director Stevenson, we just want to thank everyone for what you do every day. We absolutely know it's been challenging on your end. We are doing everything we can to provide the most up-to-date guidance and guidelines for you guys to follow. We've captured a lot of that in this presentation, but a lot more information is on our website. So I see, Stacy, you're saying, can anyone hear anything? If you can't hear me, are there others that cannot hear me? Well, if she can't hear me, then she can't hear me asking, I guess. Okay. Lots of people are saying they can hear. Thank you. So Jordan, can you send a note to Stacy and tell her she might have some settings wrong, please?
Yeah, I'm working on it right now.
Okay. Thank you. Brian, can you go to the next slide? So we've got about 25 slides we're going to go through today. This is also being recorded. By the way, I'm Tiffany Kavalak. I'm the Chief of the Division of Surface Water. I forgot to present myself. But it is being recorded and it will be posted on our website for you to go back and refer to and or to refer colleagues to. We are also have sent the full slide deck to Dawn at AWEA to post the actual presentation on the website. We have a chat feature, as you can see on the right-hand side, and that's where we will have you guys ask questions. We can try to do our best to answer questions as we go, as well as we'll have ample opportunity at the end. So if you ask a question and we don't catch it as we're presenting, please resubmit it at the end so we can discuss. Somebody's making a lot of noise. Okay, that's better. So here's an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We have a lot of COVID-19 information to disseminate. We'll talk to you about regulatory flexibility and how to go about asking for relief from regulatory obligations. We know that folks are having significant shortages of personal protective equipment, and we have some guidance on how and who to talk to. We'll talk to you about how we are operating as the agency with the telecommuting. We'll talk about contacts. We'll talk about outreach, and then we'll have a whole session on Q&A. Brian, next slide. So, as you know, the Department of Health has a main coronavirus webpage. That's where they provide the specific statistics of the day. They typically update this every day at 2:00. If you're not aware, the Governor DeWine as well as Dr. Amy Acton do a 2:00 briefing on TV. Our local channels here in Columbus cover that on every day. And it usually starts around 2:15. And they're going through all of the new parameters that they're setting forth for the day or for the month. So I highly recommend you guys to tune into that. That's where we are getting a lot of our information. Next. So Ohio EPA also has our own COVID-19 website. This is where the regulatory relief guidance is housed. Brian will talk about how to go about doing that. There's also a set of quick links on our main page to the right, and that's where you will find quick links to both the Division of Drinking and Groundwater and the Division of Surface Water. Next. So that quick link, or we do have our surface water. Did I skip something? Okay, yeah. The surface water main page for COVID-19 is here. We have a lot of questions and guidance about COVID-19 here. We have also sent a lot of this information out via email. If you look on the right, our quick links have general guidance as well as US EPA links. And we also have CDC general guidance on these quick links to the right. Next. And then US EPA's main page for coronavirus has a link for drinking water and wastewater. If you see the faucet at the top, or I'm sorry, the faucet at the bottom with the glass and water, if you click on that link, that takes you to all of US EPA's guidance for the coronavirus efforts. Brian?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Hall, the Assistant Chief for Division Surface Water, and I'm going to be giving some additional updates on and try to dive into a little bit more detail. I think the first thing that we want to point out to everybody is that there is guidance from US EPA and that we're following that kind of sets the expectation that all systems will remain operational and that they will provide adequate wastewater treatment. I think we all realize that during the state of emergency that your regulatory abilities may be limited, and because of that, Ohio EPA will be using regulatory flexibility, like Tiffany had mentioned. We'll get into a little bit more detail on that, and use enforcement discretion for any compliance that might be associated with the COVID-19 outbreak. We've been getting a lot of questions about staffing, and so it's one of the top things that we want to talk about. First of all, of utmost importance, and I think everybody is aware of this, that all wastewater operators and collection system operators are considered essential employees. This is defined by the Department of Homeland Security. I'm not sure that this is that critical, but it's in the guidelines that you need to designate your staff and you need to provide them with credentials. So if there's anybody that questions them, why they're either driving to work or doing any work in the collection system, that they have the ability to show them that that they are essential employees and that they have the right to be working out there. The other thing that is in the Homeland Security guidance is identifying essential suppliers and laboratories. So if you have chemical suppliers or do with external labs, deal with external labs, you should be also designating them as essential employees so that you they can provide you the services that you need. The next thing is about contingency planning. Tiffany alluded to drinking groundwater has done one of these webinars a couple of weeks back, and because of 9/11 security concerns, all drinking water plants are required to have contingency plans. We do not have that on the wastewater side. It's something that we should be seriously thinking about going forward. But you should be thinking about if there are resource issues at your plant as far as because of illness, and considering backup operators, staggering visits, shelter in place. We've had a couple drinking water plants that have brought in RVs and have staff that are sheltering in place because of staffing issues. Several plants have done this. The other thing we wanted to mention about operations staffing is that the expectation is to maintain your minimum oversight priority. So operators of record, we would like them to continue to meet the requirements in our rules as far as being able to staff the plant. If for whatever reason that cannot be maintained, look for other operators, certified operators. If for whatever reason you need to go further than that in the hierarchy, people that are familiar with the plant, and then this idea of remote assistance. If you have somebody that has access to the plant that might not be very familiar with how to operate a wastewater treatment plant, we talked to our compliance assistance unit, and they feel that they would be able to walk somebody through the operation of a plant, what valves to turn, what return rates need to be for that plant to get somebody by until they can get somebody back on their feet and with experience at the plant. So the important thing here is that come up with a plan, think about your hierarchy, and we will work with you on that. The other thing to mention is that Ohio EPA's operator certification requirements allow for seasonal staffing adjustments for very small plants. So anything under a class 2 plant, if it's deemed non-essential and the system's been shut down, there are ways to reduce the staffing requirements of those plants. And we ask that you coordinate and work with your district on that. Other questions we've received about being able to report. With our EDMR system being nearly 100% of the people reporting electronically, the system's up and functional, and we are expecting people to meet your deadlines for reporting. So the 20th is coming up, and we would hope to see those reports. If for whatever reason you cannot sample, be it because of illness or contract laboratory issues or whatnot, you may use the data substitution code AH, samples not taken, and we ask that you put down the COVID-19 pandemic in your comment. The other thing we'd like to point out is that if you do have to cut on sampling, your highest priority should be on your final effluent so that we know what the discharges are going out. If you need to cut back, you could look at your upstream, downstream sampling or your influent sampling or your sludge sampling, but the highest priority should be given to your final effluent. The regulatory requirements. We understand that facilities might not be able to meet their regulatory requirements. treatment sampling or MS4. The Ohio EPA is not able to grant.
Brian?
Yes.
You cut out pretty significantly at the beginning of this slide, so you may want to start over.
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you, Tiffany. Regulatory requirements. Entities' regulatory capabilities may be limited. We recognize that. So if you are having problems doing your pre-treatment sampling, or if you are an MS4 community and feel that you need to be out doing construction inspections, we understand that. Ohio EPA is not able to grant general waivers for regulatory requirements. But as we alluded to, you may make specific requests for permitting requirements to our director's office, and we're deeming this as regulatory flexibility. A recent question that we got about sampling capabilities I just wanted to bring up is if any communities have low-level mercury sampling, the clean sampling for pretreatment requires 2 people to do the sampling. So you have a clean person and a dirty person taking the sampling. And we understand that with the social distancing, that this might not be the best way to do things. So we're doing some research on that where we've looked at US EPA's regulations. It's pretty clear that the expectation is that for low-level mercury sampling, that 2 people are needed to do that sampling. So we're trying to get some direction on what the US EPA's expectations for that are, but that could be an example of where regulatory flexibility requests may be needed. Alluded to earlier, the Ohio EPA's main web page, the COVID-19 web page, is where somebody can submit for a regulatory flexibility request. It's an online form through our SurveyMonkey. You would need to list the specific requirements, circumstances preventing the compliance, the duration of the mitigative measures that you've taken, and contact with an email and telephone if we have any questions. The other thing I'd like to point out here is that at the national level, the guidance that US EPA has put out, media has kind of taken this to mean that this is a free pass for any regulatory any regulated entity, and that's just not the case. But I think what I want to point out here is that if anybody does make a request for regulatory flexibility, that it's very likely that there will be records requests made of the Ohio EPA to see the list of people that made these requests and what the circumstances were for that. So just be mindful of that. Operator assistance. We surveyed in early April all 11,000 certified operators in the state of Ohio to see if anybody would be willing to help out or assist other systems in need if they have personnel problems. Again, it never ceases to amaze me the openness and willingness of facilities. We had over 1,800 people respond to that, with 1,100 operators willing to help out with other neighbors if there are any problems. We have compiled that list, and I think it's important that if you do have problems with personnel, that you should reach out to your district contact, and we would be able to provide names to operators that are willing to help out if you are experiencing any problems. The other thing is if you did not answer that survey but would also like to be included on that list, here's the information is there of how to be added to that list. We have a operator certification test scheduled for May 6th. That exam has been postponed. We've notified all the applicants that and that they will automatically be rescheduled once the new date has been determined. And the other option is to be able to take the exam in November if that is what they would like to do. So stay tuned if you are one of those people that had registered for the exam. As soon as we have clarification on what direction and the availability of the testing facility, we'll let everybody know. The other thing that we received questions about is as far as extending the licensing renewal requirements past the end of the year. Currently, we do not have plans to extend the licensing past the end of the year. We know that OWDA is their annual conference has been rescheduled for, I believe, late August, early September. We feel that with rescheduling or with online testing, not online testing, but online educational opportunities that we do not currently plan on extending that license. So if your license is up this year and you were planning on certain events to get that examination or get those credit hours, please look at our website or OWEA's website for existing learning events, or to also plan for the fall to maybe spend a lot of time on trying to get your collection of your licensing requirements. Personal protective equipment and supplies. This is probably the area where we receive the most questions. As far as personal protective equipment, I think the first indications we got were for hand sanitizer. So with the shortage of hand sanitizer, with the shortage of gloves and masks, we're getting a lot of questions about this. What I'd like to point out is that although wastewater operators are essential employees, they're considered tier 2 and essential employees. And tier 1 essential employees, which are healthcare providers and first responders, are currently where the priorities are for personal protective equipment. I think everybody understands this. What we're asking people to consider is instead of going with disposable types of equipment, that you look at things that could be rewashed, face mask shields or rubber gloves instead of latex gloves that could be reused, cleaned and reused. And as far as masks, there is a plethora of cloth masks that are being made by many people. And although these are not the ideal situations with the shortages around the country, it's probably the best solution that we have. So those are things that we're hearing a lot of questions about. The other thing that we're hearing about is potential chemical shortages. On the East Coast, there are several wastewater treatment plants that use pure oxygen for their treatment systems, and we heard that their contracts were terminated because of the oxygen needs of the hospitals. And then on the drinking water side, we're hearing about shortages on carbon dioxide and chlorine gas. If you are having any shortages or any issues with personal protective needs, you are to coordinate those with your county EMA. So they're the ones that would be able to run this up the chain of command and see if we can find personal protective equipment or other alternatives for your chemical shortages. We also ask that you notify your district office if you're having these problems, so that we can coordinate that information too. We are, and I'll mention this, or Tiffany will mention this in a little bit. We are meeting on a daily basis with internally with Ohio EPA in the emergency management to up channel any issues that we hear to the state EMA to to at least let them be aware of what we're hearing. If you need to get a hold of anybody at Ohio EPA, as of I believe it was March 13th, with the governor's executive order, all state EPA workers are working via telecommuting. So they're working at home, and they are we're trying to iron out all of our IT issues. The other thing is that our offices, the district offices, are also closed. We are not currently receiving mail. So if there are any things that have been sent through the mail in the last 4 weeks, it's likely that they have not been delivered. Our hope is in the future that as the loosening of the stay-at-home order moves along, that we would be able to begin operations back in our offices. But until this time, we are telecommuting, and as you can imagine, with about 1,000 employees at Ohio EPA, we are ironing out our IT issues, and we're slowly being able to get every staff person at least access to critical information on our mainframes. Because of that, we're asking that any correspondence that you have with the agency, that you do it through electronic submissions. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a second. The other thing that I already mentioned is the agency is involved in the Ohio Emergency Management Agency and response, and are reporting to them on a daily basis of any issues, environmental issues that come to our attention. Because of the ability to not accept mail, our permit to install plans, we are looking at alternative ways to get those reviewed and get those processed. So if you are planning to submit new detailed plans or a general plan, we ask that you submit those to the district supervisor in each of our districts. If our email system has a limitation on the size of files that can be submitted to us. So if they are less than 25 megabytes, those can be directly emailed to the district supervisor. If they are larger than 25 megabytes, we would have to go through a portal to accept those plans. Ohio EPA is using Liquid Files to do that. And what we ask is that if you do have submission of plans that are larger than 25 megabytes, reach out to that district supervisor and ask for directions on how to upload those files to this web cloud system, so that we can manage that. If you have had plans submitted to Ohio EPA over the last 4 weeks and have not heard anything from your district contact, we ask that you contact them and ask for a status update. And it's quite likely that they're going to need you to submit those plans electronically to us. The other thing that I would say about permit to installs is that we are currently trying to stand up electronic payments in our e-business system to allow payments of PTIs. As of currently, we are up until mid-March, we were a hard copy, real paper check type of operation, and we've had to shift that operation to 100% electronic plans. And if like I said, if you have plans that are in need of approval, reach out to the supervisor and check on the status of those. Any applications submitted to Ohio EPA and Division of Surface Water should go through our e-business portal. The stream system can allow for the submission of general permit, notice of intent, and notice of terminations. All individual NPDES permits and indirect discharge permit applications can all be submitted through the e-business portal. And the same as for 401 certifications, isolated wetland permits, and director authorizations. Those all can be done through our e-business center. As far as reporting, I mentioned our EDMR system, which has been up and running for many years. That is the way to get your discharge monitoring reports to us. The stream system also allows for reports and forms, non-compliance forms and biomonitoring report, and separate sewer overflow annual reports and emergency overflow non-compliance reports can be submitted. Pretreatment annual and quarterly reports can be submitted through our stream system, as well as our annual sludge and annual MS4s. E-business, as far as 401 certification or isolated wetland permits, those also can be submitted through that. And although we have not broadcast this, the operator of record and minimum staffing reportings, there is a application system on the e-business center that will allow people to make changes to their operator of record and to start reporting their minimum staffing reporting. If you are interested in that, please contact myself or Cole Miller from Division Surface Water, and we can get you up and running on the new operator of record minimum staffing reporting requirements. Also would like to shout out that our compliance assistance unit, John and Andy and Nick are available for troubleshooting and providing assistance in operations for any plants. I mentioned earlier this concept of remote assistance. These are abilities that Ohio EPA are able to provide. We are not able to do any inspections at plants, but in talking to John Van Domelen, he's indicated that he's receiving many calls about operation. And it's kind of oddly, the one that he mentioned to me was about treatment plants ammonia removal. And it turned out because everybody's working from home, or many people were working from home, that plant had not seen the types of flows during the day that they normally saw. And John was able to help them make some adjustments to keep them into compliance. If you do have a need to reach out to our compliance assistance unit, please contact Ryan Lake. He's the supervisor of that unit, and Ryan's information is available on the slide. Also, our water pollution control loan fund and water supply revolving loan accounts are functioning as they normally do. If you do have questions about your loans or what the status of potential applications are, please reach out to our Division of Environmental Finance.
Ryan, you've cut out. You've cut out.
I'm cutting out again. I'm sorry. When did I cut out, Tiffany?
At the beginning of the slide.
At the beginning of this. Okay, I'm sorry. The revolving loan fund programs are continuing to issue loans. They also are working on reviewing and scoring applications. Staff are working remotely, as are the Division Surface Water staff. They are so the water supply program management plan that should be available for review mid-May and be finalized by July. So if you are on the water supply side and interested in applying for any loans this year, please pay attention to that. We are still planning on meeting those typical deadlines. And if you do have any questions about the revolving loan fund, you're welcome to reach out to John Bernstein, who's the Assistant Chief in the Division of Environmental Financial Assistance. The other thing we'd like to mention is that as operators are continuing to work and have potential exposure to COVID, that plants be mindful of possible issues with with infecting other staff members. And this slide is the CDC's guidance for ensuring or taking proper measures in trying to minimize exposure for staff. The pre-screening, as somebody comes to work, you should be considering taking temperatures or assess symptoms as workers start to work. You should be regularly monitoring employees, and if they do have any symptoms, please send them home. The idea of wearing masks, which we know are very limited, and remind everybody of social distancing and the importance of disinfection and cleaning of workspaces. Below is a link to the CDC's guidance for this, and recommend that everybody take a look at this and adhere to these recommendations. And with that, I will turn it back over to Tiffany.
Thank you, Brian. I've been working on the side and trying to answer questions as we've gone. So I think I've got everyone that's asked questions so far. Okay, so when we talk about success stories, we'll let you know what has been done on the water side. And I know some of you do both water and wastewater, so I apologize if this is duplicative, but for the wastewater side of the house, we'd like to do some success stories to show the public all the extraordinary measures you guys are doing to ensure public health and the environment safety. We got stories from Canton and Akron, and I think Cincinnati, about how they have been hit with coronavirus with some of their operators, and how they are putting, as Brian said, mobile RVs on site so that folks can stay on site and not infect their family, but they still feel okay to work, and they're being separated from their other operators, and they're working 12-hour shifts, but they're going above and beyond just to make sure that they are serving their communities with clean water. So the agency, I believe, is going to be pressing out those stories through our social media avenues, as well as hoping that Governor DeWine may air that video during one of his press conferences. So all I'm asking for is if you guys are doing something that is really, well, anything, doing your job in and of itself, I know in these times are extraordinary. But if you have been hit with something unique that you have overcome, we would like to share your story. And if you could email anything like that you have with pictures or text or a video, that would be phenomenal. Okay, next one. So we've gotten several questions about MS4 submitting their hard copies before the deadline via mail. You do not need to go back in streams and resubmit your report. That is correct. We will make sure that when we get in the office, we process your hard copy report, and you are considered in compliance. Elizabeth is saying it might be good to go over all the questions. Why don't we do that at the end? So staying in touch, I will let you know that we are setting up biweekly calls with OWEA and some of our very large POTWs, and just making sure that we have our finger on the pulse of the needs of community. Brian has been doing email blasts to our only email contacts, which are typically the folks that are submitting your EDMRs. So if you are not the folks submitting your EDMRs, please make sure that your information is up to date in our system so that we can communicate with you directly via email. We are also putting everything that we have up on our website, so check that regularly. And we are making sure that everything that we put up on our website also goes to AWEA, and they are either putting that information also on their website or sending out email blasts to the membership. And so hopefully through those efforts, we're reaching most of the community. We do have that regulatory flexibility portal, and it sounds like that's something that some of the folks here on the call are going to need to get specific regulatory relief, specifically for MS4 inspections and or reporting. We are also, because the OWEA membership doesn't necessarily reach all of the communities that we're trying to reach, we have asked our district inspectors to start with the smallest communities and start doing calls and making sure directly to those communities and making sure that they are okay and that they have everything they need, or if they need assistance, that we get them the assistance that they need. All right, next slide. So the big part of what we wanted to accomplish today too is how can we be of further assistance to you? If you haven't looked at our websites and or OWEA's website or US EPA's websites, what we want to know is there guidance out there that you don't have that you need? Do you need technical assistance directly? Do we need to get you in touch with our district technical specialists? Again, as Brian talked about, are you in dire need of equipment and supplies? Talk to your local emergency management association agency in your county and let us know too. There may be extra supplies that we have in our district offices that we can give you, and or we can elevate these things if they're highly critical. What other things can we do to help you? And we also want to know, how frequently would you like to have these discussions? I think the water side is doing this weekly. We were thinking perhaps bi-weekly. Things aren't changing that rapidly at this point, that weekly for us, I think, is probably too frequent. And then anything else. So I'm going to go back and look at these chat questions and see if we can answer everything that we have so far. Okay, again, we've gotten questions. If you submitted your hard copy annual report for your small MS4 in the mail ahead of April 1st, you do not need to go back and re-enter it into Streets. We have it. It's either sitting in our offices or it's on hold at the post office. So consider it submitted. Let's see, what else? There was also a question about if we cannot complete our annual inspections on time. Some of the food processors don't want any outside sources entering their buildings, and we understand that. So that is a situation where they individually need to go onto our website and fill out the Survey Monkey and answer the questions and get regulatory relief explicitly for MS4 inspections. And you need to answer all of the questions, and then we'll give a formal response for our record and your record that you are getting regulatory relief on those items. What else? Will the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund funds be tightened, reduced as the state of Ohio has directed considerations of spending cuts to departments? So it's a great question. That's not our program. You'll probably have to ask John Bernstein or Jerry Rao directly. But we are being asked to take 20% reductions in our respective departments. However, that currently does not apply to federal pass-through money. So if we are giving sub-grants and probably loans, that money has not been targeted for reduction because it's not state funds that would get any credit to be redirected to another agency. Do we still report operator hours during this time? Brian?
Yes, that it is something that we would expect to be done. Again, the idea here is to try to maintain as much normal operations as possible. If you cannot meet your operator hours, please document that in your DMR and put in the information in the comment fields.
So I see a comment on underground storage tank removal closure projects that are planned for completion before annual renewal payments are due. Will the restriction of state inspectors not doing field work allow a business relief or registration payment deadline? That's under our Bureau of Underground Storage Tanks. So I think you would need to ask that question directly to them. I don't know what type of regulatory relief that Buster or the Department of Commerce is providing. And if there's a surface water connection to that I'm not honing in on, please let me know.
Typically, they would need potentially for a cleanup some type of permit to install for their treatment system. But again,
So
we've done that. Yeah, so we have our ability to issue PTIs. Something would have been submitted between the time we shut down and currently. Please reach out to the district PTI supervisor and work with them as far as being able to get your plans submitted to us for a review.
So the other question is, can we send N95 masks to Battelle? I thought I saw in one of the governor's briefings that Battelle is open for business to do this. And I know the hospitals are being asked to utilize Battelle. And I have not heard where other entities cannot take advantage of Battelle's re-sterilization. So I would call Battelle directly and ask them. Somebody's saying that the Public Works Commission funding is temporarily on hold. There are a lot of things that are temporarily on hold until we redo our budgets. Just to give folks an idea, for Ohio EPA, we were asked to do a 20% budget cut for 2020, which is now and the end of the fiscal year. We have done those budget cuts and provided them to Office of Budget and Management to review. And then we are also going to be asked to do a 20% budget cut for 2021. And we have not yet identified for our agency where those cuts will be taken. But for 2020, since we have a hiring freeze between now and the end of the year, surface water has not been hit hard with those budget cuts for our current programs. I can speak to that. And a lot of our money is federal pass-through or 319 grants and other items. Okay, somebody's saying, hi Ed, you said you saw, hard to scroll on these chats. Saw a presentation by a Dutch researcher that COVID was detected in wastewater a week before the first case was identified. Is there any thought to use effluent testing of COVID to identify hotspots of the virus? Could it be used with systems to identify? So there is a gentleman at Region 5 Cincinnati. I need to go find his name. 1 second, and I will put you guys in touch. He is looking for volunteers. And Don, didn't I ask you guys to send out his information?
Yeah, so this is Dawn with OWEA. I can speak to this just a little bit. We've actually had conversations. The gentleman's name is Dr. Jay Garland, and he is with that US EPA Research Lab in Cincinnati. Where they are right now is they are currently doing viral load testing on hotspots. So right now they're focused on like New York, New Orleans. I believe Seattle was one of them too. They are working to kind of change some things in the lab so they can do some testing in Ohio. And they're going to be working with a very small number to begin with. So we're working with them to kind of come up with who and what criteria they need. So at this point, if you're interested, you can contact OWEA, but we're working with AOMWA and ourselves and Jay to try to come up with some stuff. But eventually, the hope is to be able to do some surveillance with using wastewater to try to see where hot spots are. The nice news is they chose Ohio specifically because we are making decisions concerning the virus based on data. So they feel they could have the most impact here. And it's also convenient, the labs in Cincinnati.
Correct. Thank you very much. Will MPDS permits that have been through the public comment period be issued soon? Yes, hopefully. There was probably a 2 to 3 week period. We're now in week 5. The first 2 to 3 weeks, not all of our permits processing staff had the equipment they needed to process permits, but they do now. And we have been working through issuing MPDS permits as fast as we can. Obviously, waiting 3 weeks before we got back to it, we've got a bit of a backlog. So if you have something that absolutely needs to be issued and brought to the top of the stack, I implore you to reach out to Ashley Ward, who is the MPDS manager here in Columbus and central office, and she can help maneuver high priority permits that need to get put in place quickly. I'm still scrolling. Will we be providing some suggested guidance on how staff can safely work in close proximity? I think that's coming out in other avenues, probably from the CDC and from US EPA. And we will share that as soon as we have it. In watching the president's briefing yesterday, they talked about 3 phases of coming back to work, and they have to develop guidance for close proximity for other workplaces too. But I haven't seen anything specifically for the water and wastewater side. Brian, have you?
No, I think again we included the slides about the CDC and recommendations for working in close proximity, but that's about it. I've not seen anything else.
Defiance is currently participating in a testing program for COVID-19 in raw wastewater. Studies being conducted by MIT and Harvard. There are over 100 wastewater participants in the study. Great. Thanks, Mark. That's good to know. So, I'm getting questions on 2 different parts. Hold on. Go back to the top. Brian, are you getting questions at both the top and the bottom? There's a chat feature in the Q&A. Okay.
Since I'm sharing my screen, I'm limited in what I can see.
Okay.
With the chat.
Okay, we got some thank yous. Just to make sure they understand, could you please repeat your understanding relative to the SRF OWDA funding from 2 perspectives, ongoing projects with funding and upcoming projects? we are not aware of any funding cuts to the state revolving loan fund. And we are not aware of funding from OWDA for upcoming projects. None of that has been talked about in terms of being cut to date. But
And I was just going to say, Tiffany, that DEFA is making plans to release the water supply program management plan later. So we're I would assume that they are making, trying to be as business as usual as possible as far as upcoming projects. And what, typically the wastewater program management plan out in August. So stay tuned to that, and we'll try to share that information if it's delayed or if it stays on time. So just stay tuned.
And we had hoped that we would have John Bernstein or Jerry Rao on today's webinar, but they both had a conflict. So we will schedule our next outreach event like this at a time that both of them can be available for those types of questions. Brian, can you go to the next slide? So I did also want folks to know that our Public Involvement Center has developed a hashtag that's Not All Heroes Wear Capes. And they've asked that our staff put this at as our signature on all of our email. This is going to go out to a lot of social media. And I think it's just the way that the director wanted to make sure that you guys knew that we appreciate everything that you're doing. Dawn, we have signatures available on our website too. Okay, good. So, Dawn, I'm thinking maybe once every 2 weeks for this, we'll do it opposite of our other call. If that works with folks. And
Absolutely.
We'll just build on the types of questions. And if you guys are having questions independently of anything, again, that we went over today, get them to Brian and I ahead of time, and we can make sure that we address those on the next webinar that we will do on May, hopefully.
May 1st.
Friday's a day that doesn't work well for others. We can let Dawn, I would say let Dawn know directly if there are bad days or times that are conflicting with a large piece of the group, and we will just rely on Dawn as to when the next best date and time would be for this. And we'll make ourselves available.
Tiffany, if I may, one thing we would like to ask is make sure we're on everyone's safe senders list. Trying to send out these notices to not just our members, but to everyone in our database. So the way the system works, at times we get blocked. So if you can just make sure that OWEA is on your safe sender list, that will help you get the information. You can also always just check our website too.
Well, we hope this was helpful. And again, if there's things we didn't cover and or you want us to expand on in greater detail, we can do so at the one that we have in the next couple of weeks. And reminder again, it would be very nice to have some success stories about how you guys have overcome these situations that we could highlight through our social media and make sure the public's aware of everything that you're doing. We'd really like to do that marketing. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tiffany and Brian, OWEA, we'd just like to thank you guys for taking the time. And again, we know all our operators are everyone's working in a new normal, and we're grateful that everyone is still working to keep our water clean and safe.
No doubt. Ditto. Much appreciation.
Yeah, I think what I would say is that we're very appreciative of everything. We're all in this together, and
Right.
and we're the work that the operators in the state of Ohio do is phenomenal work. We're much appreciative of that, and if there are issues, please reach out to your district representatives and communicate with them. We're here to try to help you work through this and use us as a resource.
Hey, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time, and we'll do this as often as you need it. Have a great weekend.